There are moments in history when the sky offers a sign so quiet, so fragile, that only those who watch closely understand its meaning. Tonight that sign has returned. A dim light has appeared at the edge of our solar system, a wandering star streaking in from a place beyond our maps. Scientists call it Three-Eye Atlas, an interstellar object that does not belong to this world or any world we know. But the ancient Sumerian skywatchers had another name for it. They called it the Wanderer. The first time this object crossed our heavens, long before cities rose or stories were written in clay, the world changed. Floods reshaped continents, kingdoms collapsed, seasons shifted. And according to the old Sumerian priests, the appearance of the Wanderer marked the beginning of an ancient cycle. A cycle that brought not only transformation, but also the return of a distant world the ancients feared and revered. They called it Nibiru, the world of the Anunnaki. Tonight the Wanderer has returned. And its return raises a question that echoes across 5,000 years of forgotten warnings. Why now? Before we wander any further into this mystery, feel free to leave a like and share a quiet note in the comments about where you are watching from and at what hour. And as always in our videos, the images you see simply help set the scene. Thank you for being here and for supporting these quiet explorations. At first glance, Three-Eye Atlas should be nothing more than a cold fragment drifting through space. The official explanation suggests it is similar to Oumuamua, an interstellar visitor shaped by chance and gravity. But almost immediately, something about this object refused to fit the familiar patterns. It did not dim the way a natural object should. It did not follow a predictable course. And as astronomers measured its movements, a quiet unease began to spread through the observatories watching it. The Wanderer brightened, then dimmed, then brightened again, almost in a slow and rhythmic pulse, as if responding to a signal we could not detect. Its path curved in ways that strained the models used to predict celestial motion. Radiation pressure could explain some of the drift, scientists said, but not the subtle acceleration, not the soft heartbeat of light that seemed to echo from deep within the object. The Sumerians would not have been surprised. They wrote that the Wanderer moved with intention, that it paused in the sky as though considering its path. For them, this was not a harmless visitor. It was the first sign of the Anunnaki warning, a reminder that a greater force moved behind the stars. Thousands of years ago, the skywatchers of Sumer stood upon the high platforms of their temples and pressed their observations into clay. These writings described a star that behaved unlike any other. A star that travelled across the heavens in long cycles. A star that returned after ages of silence. And often, carved beside these observations was a second symbol, a curved line, a great arc, the path of something larger, heavier, and far more distant. Their texts tell us that when the Wanderer returned, it was never alone. It would appear first, a messenger to mark the beginning of the cycle. And then, beyond the dark horizon, another world would begin its long return, Nibiru, the home of the Anunnaki, the world that shaped the earliest ages of humanity, and the world whose passing brought upheaval to the earth. Modern science does not accept the existence of Nibiru. There is no official model that predicts a distant returning planet, yet the behaviour of objects far beyond Neptune has puzzled researchers for years. Their orbits tilt, they cluster in strange patterns, they drift toward points in the sky where no visible mass exists. Some scientists quietly suggest that an unseen planet may be shaping these motions, not a world like ours. Something heavier, something distant, something ancient. The Sumerians would have called it exactly what it was to them, a world of return. But tonight, we are not concerned with the hidden planet itself. We are concerned with the sign that comes before it. The Wanderer glows again on the edge of our world. The same slow pulse that troubled the ancient skywatchers now flickers across modern instruments. And once again, a warning rises from the deep past, a whisper written in clay, a reminder that the cycle may be turning once more. Some researchers argue that we are reading too much into this, that the brightening of Atlas is nothing more than sunlight striking frozen gases, that its unusual path is a quirk of gravity and distance, that ancient priests simply misinterpreted the sky, but the alignment between the old star maps and the arc of Atlas is difficult to dismiss. The symbols carved by hands 5,000 years old match the curves traced by this interstellar object tonight. If the ancients saw this same wanderer, if they marked its passing as a sign of upheaval, then perhaps there is meaning here we have not yet recognized. The Sumerians believed that the sky speaks through signs, not through words, and that every cycle begins with a quiet return. As Atlas glides across the outer dark, its light faint but unwavering, it becomes impossible not to feel what the sky watchers once felt: a presence approaching, a cycle stirring, a forgotten warning rising with the dim glow of a star that should not be here. The wanderer has come back, and as its light falls softly upon our world, the first chapter of an ancient prophecy begins to unfold, not with thunder, not with fire, but with a single point of light moving silently through the night. A light the ancients feared, a light they trusted, a light they called the first sign. When the wanderer returns, they said, "The heavens begin to shift, and tonight the heavens have moved." Long before telescopes followed the movements of distant objects, long before numbers were used to measure the heavens, there were people who watched the sky with nothing but their eyes, their patience, and an unbroken memory of the stars. These were the Sumerian sky watchers, the earliest astronomers our world has ever known. Their observatories were not made of glass or metal, but of mud brick platforms rising above the roofs of their cities. From these quiet heights they charted the slow turning of the heavens one night at a time. To them the sky was not an empty place. It was a living scroll. Every shift of light, every wandering star, every change in the rhythm of the night carried meaning. The Sumerians believed the heavens held the timeline of the world, a clock far older than humanity itself. And it was here, on these patient nights, that the first warning was written. The priests recorded a strange star that moved unlike any other. It did not follow the steady paths of the known planets, nor the predictable drift of the constellations. It wandered. It paused. It changed brightness in ways the other lights did not. The priests named it the Red Wanderer, a star that came from the deep darkness beyond the familiar sky. They pressed its path into clay with careful hands, marking each night the object shifted across the horizon. These markings have survived 5,000 years. When modern researchers examined them, most believed they were symbolic, not astronomical. Some argued they represented spiritual ideas rather than real events in the sky. Others said they might be ceremonial patterns tied to seasonal festivals. Yet the shape of these markings refused to fit those explanations. Their curves resembled arcs traced by real objects in motion. Their angles matched the tilt of certain celestial paths. And in one tablet, a line stood out sharply, almost hauntingly, a long shallow curve that descended low beneath the plane of the stars, before rising again into familiar territory. That curve, forgotten for ages, matches almost perfectly the early trajectory reconstructed for 3i Atlas. No one knows how the Sumerians could have witnessed such a distant object. Their tools were simple. Their methods relied on naked eyes and long memory, but their records persist. They described a wandering light that did not belong to the heavens they knew, a light that came only in vast cycles, a light they believed was sent from the realm of the Anunnaki. For the Sumerians, this wandering star was not merely a celestial body. It was a sign, a herald of a greater movement in the distant sky. They believed the wanderer announced the beginning of a cycle older than their civilization, a cycle that shaped the rise and fall of ages. Modern scholars debate these interpretations. They insist the Sumerians used poetic language, not literal scientific observations. They point out that ancient myths often personified natural events, and yet the precision of the clay tablets remains difficult to ignore. The priests recorded the wanderer as if it were real, as if its presence carried weight. They even carved the same symbol again and again beside the description, a circle with a long trailing line, mimicking a comet or a star with a glowing tail. That symbol reappears across different cities of Sumer. Eridu, Nippur, each carving slightly different, drawn by different hands but unified in meaning. A light that moved with intention. A light that the priests watched with a mix of awe and unease. In one fragment, the priests wrote that the wanderer returned during moments when the world shifted, when kings fell, when floodwaters rose, when the order of the heavens trembled. They believed the star carried a message from the old teachers, the Anunnaki, who once guided humanity in the earliest dawn of civilization. This belief was not superstition. To the Sumerians, the sky was a language, and they were fluent in it. As the light returned again and again across the centuries, they recognized a pattern. A long period of silence followed by a sudden appearance at the edge of the world. A slow drift. A change in brightness, and then a warning. The priests wrote that the wanderer always came first. It was the beginning of a chain, a sign that another presence followed behind it. Something larger, something deeper, something tied to a world they feared to name, Nibiru. The priests understood that the heavens operated on cycles so vast that a single lifetime was only a whisper within them. But the cycle that mattered most was the cycle of the wanderer. When it returned, the sky watchers prepared themselves. They lit fires on the temple tops. They fasted in silence, and they waited for the next sign, the one that would determine the fate of their age. Now, the same wanderer seen by those ancient watchers has appeared once more. Its arc across our sky mirrors the arc they carved into clay with steady hands. And just as the priests once asked, we must now ask again, why has it returned? Some modern astronomers dismiss this alignment as coincidence. They argue the resemblance between ancient carvings and modern data is nothing more than pattern seeking. And yet many quietly admit that not all movements of 3i Atlas can be explained. Its faint pulses defy natural expectations. Its trajectory seems guided by forces we do not yet fully understand. And its timing, emerging now after thousands of years of silence, is unsettling. The Sumerian skywatchers did not believe in coincidence. They believed in cycles, in patterns, in signs written across the heavens. They believed the wanderer returned for a reason, and they left these records so future civilizations might understand. Perhaps they knew that one day, far beyond their own time, another generation would see the same wandering light, and perhaps they hoped someone would remember the warning. Now, as we follow the same path the priests traced in clay, we step deeper into the mystery they left behind. The wanderer has returned, and with it, the first stage of an ancient prophecy begins to unfold once again. From a distance, the wanderer appears small and harmless, a faint point of light drifting through the cold edges of the solar system. But the closer we look, the less it behaves like anything we have seen before. It moves with a strange irregularity, a quiet defiance of the rules that govern comets and interstellar debris. And it is this behavior, more than anything else, that has caused both fascination and quiet concern among the astronomers who follow its path. When 3i Atlas was first detected, scientists expected a simple object, a fragment of ice and dust. A visitor pushed into our system by chance, nothing more. But within days of observation, inconsistencies began to appear. Its brightness did not follow the normal curve of sublimation, the gradual release of gas as sunlight touches frozen material. Instead, Atlas brightened suddenly, then dimmed, then brightened again in a slow rhythm, almost like a distant heartbeat. This pattern repeated with subtle precision, challenging the idea that it was a natural process. Some researchers tried to explain the pulsation as a rotational effect, a spinning body reflecting sunlight differently as it turned. But the timing did not match. The intervals were too steady, too measured. A rotation should cause predictable cycles. Atlas showed something else, something closer to intention, as though the object were responding to unseen forces or signaling into the darkness. Others suggested that outgassing might be responsible. Jets of vapor could shift the brightness and even alter the trajectory. But outgassing is chaotic, unpredictable. It does not follow a smooth rhythmic pattern. And more troubling than the light was the motion. As astronomers plotted Atlas across the sky, the trajectory refused to settle into a familiar model. It drifted slightly off course, then corrected itself. It angled in ways that gravitational simulations could not easily account for. Solar radiation pressure could explain a small part of the drift, but not the systematic adjustments. It was as if the object were responding to something we could not detect, nudged by a force beyond our instruments. The Sumerian priests once wrote that the wanderer slowed and paused in the heavens, as though considering its path. At the time, historians interpreted this as poetic exaggeration, but the irregularities we see now echo those ancient lines with uncomfortable clarity. The strangest discovery came when infrared sensors detected bursts of heat along the object's path. Natural objects cool and warm slowly, following predictable rhythms, but Atlas released heat in sudden pulses, small, concentrated flashes that radiated outward before fading into silence. These bursts were not strong enough to suggest artificial machinery, but they were too organized to fit the behavior of a fragment of ancient rock drifting through space. A team in Europe compared these thermal pulses with older records from other interstellar objects. None matched, not even Oumuamua, whose own oddities sparked debate years earlier. Atlas was different, more deliberate, more controlled, or at least more aligned with the idea of a cycle rather than an accident. Some scientists argued that the readings were errors, noise in the instruments, the kind of anomaly that appears when data is pushed too far. But the same pulses were recorded by telescopes in Hawaii, in Chile, and in South Africa. Different instruments, different teams, the same results. And when the data from all observatories was combined, a pattern emerged. A series of faint pulses spaced along the exact arc that ancient Sumerian tablets claimed the wanderer once followed. Coincidence can explain many things, but coincidence rarely repeats itself so precisely across thousands of years. As Atlas drifted deeper into our system, another problem appeared. Its tail revealed traces of metals that should not exist in a natural interstellar body. Not industrial metals, but elements fused under extreme conditions. Temperatures far higher than those found in typical comet formation. Temperatures that suggest either an ancient cosmic collision or something far more unusual. The Sumerians wrote of a wanderer that travelled the sky with fragments trailing behind it. Fragments that glowed like hammered bronze when struck by the sun. Modern researchers dismiss these as metaphors, images used to impress listeners. But as the tale of Atlas spread under solar radiation, the metallic signature became harder to ignore. The object looked nothing like the wanderers we know, and everything like the wanderer the ancients feared. Astronomers remain cautious. They insist that more data is needed, more time to study, more precision to separate natural drift from meaningful behavior. Yet in private conversations, some admit what they cannot say publicly. Atlas moves as if it is part of something larger, a precursor, a marker, a herald. A few scientists have even whispered a quiet question, one they would never place in a published paper. What if Atlas is not the cause of the anomaly, but a response to it? What if something else in the deep reaches of space has begun its return, and Atlas is simply the first sign? It is a question that has echoed through the fears and hopes of skywatchers for thousands of years. They believed the Wanderer announced the movement of a distant world, a world with the power to reshape ages, a world whose return marked the turning of the cosmic wheel. In this moment, as 3i Atlas moves across our instruments with that slow, steady pulse, the question rises once again. Is this object drifting by chance? Or is it fulfilling the same role it played long ago, the role recorded by the priests of Sumer? The Wanderer has returned, and its behavior suggests it has not come alone. In the quiet dawn of civilization, long before cities hardened into stone, the Sumerians spoke of beings who walked among the earliest people. They were not described as gods in the way later cultures imagined them, clothed in thunder or fire. Instead, they were remembered as teachers, as guides, as figures of knowledge whose presence shaped the beginnings of human history. The Sumerians called them the Anunnaki. According to the oldest tablets, the Anunnaki were tall, radiant, and calm in a way that set them apart from humans. Their movements were measured, their voices carried weight, their eyes were described not as supernatural, but as knowing. They walked the early world with an ease that suggested they had come from somewhere far beyond it. In those ancient stories, they did not conquer. They instructed. They showed the first engineers how to cut stone cleanly. They taught the early astronomers how to measure the sky. They guided priests in reading the slow turning of the heavens. To the Sumerians, these teachings did not come from imagination. They came from memory, from encounters passed down through generations until they were finally etched into clay. And in those etched lines, the Anunnaki were always connected to the movement of distant lights. Some modern historians claim these stories are nothing more than symbolic tales, that the Anunnaki represent natural forces or ancestral figures, that ancient people created myths to explain knowledge they could not understand. And yet, the consistency of these stories across different regions remains difficult to explain. Civilizations separated by mountains, deserts, and centuries told similar accounts of luminous teachers who descended from the sky. Cultures with no contact each described beings who brought knowledge tied to the stars. The Sumerians believed the Anunnaki came from a distant world, a place that moved along a long and hidden arc through the darkness, a world that returned only in great cycles. And they believed that the Wanderer, the strange star now known as 3i Atlas, was part of the sign that this distant home was drawing near again. One of the most mysterious tablets describes a gathering of the Anunnaki beneath a darkening sky. The priests wrote that the beings stood upon a high platform, watching a slow-moving light drift across the heavens. The light pulsed softly, just as Atlas pulses now. The priests believed the Anunnaki recognized this light. They had seen it before, and they knew what followed. For the people of Sumer, the Anunnaki were not just visitors, they were keepers of cycles, guardians of long patterns written across the heavens. The priests said the Anunnaki understood the timing of ages, the rise and fall of worlds, the turning of cosmic seasons. And when the Wanderer appeared, it marked a moment the Anunnaki had prepared for since the earliest era of humanity. These ancient writings suggest that the Anunnaki left the world not because they were defeated, but because the cycle required it. They stepped back into the dark beyond the sky, leaving behind the knowledge humans needed to grow. But they also left a warning, a message carved into stone. When the Wanderer returned, the cycle would turn once more, and the world would enter a moment of choice. Some modern researchers dismiss the idea of the Anunnaki as literal beings. They argue that advanced knowledge in ancient cultures can be explained through human ingenuity, that early civilizations were not as primitive as we once believed. Yet even among skeptical scholars, there is quiet admiration for the precision of Sumerian star charts and the complexity of their mathematics. Their understanding of planetary motion often appears far ahead of their time. The question remains, how did they know? The Sumerians credited their knowledge to the Anunnaki, and whether these beings were physical visitors or the embodiment of ancestral wisdom, the stories they left behind point again and again to one truth. When the wanderer appeared, something vast and ancient moved behind it, as 3-Eye Atlas traces the faint path recorded in their clay tablets. The memories of those early teachers rise again. The calm presence, the luminous form, the quiet instruction beneath the turning sky, and the warning whispered across millennia. The wanderer does not come alone. As we move deeper into the heart of this mystery, we follow the path the Anunnaki once walked, a path that leads from their sealed kingdom to the shadow of a returning world. The next sign lies buried within the ruins of the first great cities, waiting to reveal the forgotten chapter of the age that came before. There are places in the ancient world that seem older than history itself, places where the stone does not simply lie in ruins, but appears to sleep. Places where the air feels heavy, as if holding a memory it cannot release. Among these forgotten ruins, scattered across deserts and buried beneath shifting sands, lies the trace of a kingdom the Sumerians spoke of in whispers. A kingdom they said was built not by human hands alone, a kingdom shaped by the Anunnaki. The oldest tablets describe this kingdom as a place of quiet radiance, not a city of warfare or empire, but a sanctuary of knowledge, where early people learned the first written signs, the first measurements of time, the first alignments of the heavens. They wrote that the Anunnaki lived among humans here, teaching in the open, guiding the builders through methods that seemed far beyond the abilities of the age. But one day, the stories say, the teachers departed, not with destruction or fire, but in silence. And when they left, the kingdom did not fall the way human civilizations do. It did not crumble under invasion, nor fade through neglect. Instead, the kingdom was sealed. Many ancient cultures have myths of hidden cities, but the Sumerian description is different. They were precise. They described walls fused by a heat that did not come from fire. They described tunnels closed by slabs of stone so perfectly fitted that no tool marks remain. They told of chambers whose surfaces shimmered like cooled metal, though the material has not been identified. To them, these signs were proof that the Anunnaki did not abandon this place out of fear or loss. They sealed it with intention. Modern archaeologists have found ruins that match these descriptions. In some sites, the stones appear melted along the edges, fused together as if exposed to intense heat for only an instant. These temperatures are far beyond what ancient furnaces or torches could produce. Some researchers explain this as natural geological shifts or lightning strikes, but the patterns of fusion are too uniform, too controlled. The seams run straight, uninterrupted, as though crafted by technology we no longer understand. There are corridors deep beneath these sites where the air still carries a faint metallic scent, unchanged after thousands of years. In a few tunnels, the walls are carved so smoothly they seem polished by machines rather than chisels. And in one chamber, a set of symbols glows faintly when touched by firelight, as though reacting to heat in a way that no known pigment should. These anomalies remain officially unexplained. They do not fit the timeline of human development. They do not match known construction techniques. But to the Sumerians, they were simply remnants of the first kingdom, the place where the teachers once walked. According to their writings, this kingdom was hidden because humanity was not yet ready to carry the full weight of what it contained. Knowledge, they believed, could lift a civilization to greatness or pull it toward ruin. And when the Anunnaki left, they sealed the kingdom so that it would sleep until the cycle turned again. In one fragment of a tablet, the priests wrote, "When the wanderer returns, the door will tremble." To them, the reappearance of the strange star was not only a cosmic sign but a key, a signal that the hidden kingdom would stir, that old knowledge would rise, that the seal placed upon the ancient halls would begin to weaken. For thousands of years, this warning remained little more than a myth. But now, as Three-Eye Atlas crosses the sky once more, some archaeologists have reported unexplained vibrations beneath excavation sites. Delicate instruments have detected faint tremors in areas long assumed stable. In one ruined temple, dust fell from a sealed doorway that had not shifted in centuries. Scientists dismiss these events as coincidences, the result of changing temperatures or subtle shifts in the Earth. But the timing remains unsettling. These tremors occurred on nights when Atlas reached key points in its arc, points that align with the old clay diagrams of the Wanderer's Path. The Sumerians believed that the sealed kingdom was linked to the movements of the heavens, that its awakening would be triggered not by human hands, but by the turning of the cosmic cycle. They believed the Wanderer marked the beginning of that cycle, a signal that the ancient world was stirring again. If their stories hold truth, then the kingdom sealed by the teachers may not remain silent forever. Its walls may tremble, its passages may breathe again, and the knowledge hidden within may one day return to the world that forgot it. For now, the ruins lie still beneath the earth, waiting. But the Wanderer has already appeared, and according to the ancient sky watchers, the next sign would rise not from stone, but from the deep darkness beyond the horizon. It is the sign of a world returning. A world the Sumerians feared to name, yet recorded in unwavering detail. Nibiru. The Sumerians did not speak lightly of Nibiru. To them it was not merely a distant world, nor a myth wrapped in celestial imagery. It was a presence, a force, a wandering realm whose passage shaped the rise and fall of ages. And though the priests described it with the reverence reserved for gods, they also spoke of it with the precision of astronomers. In their records, Nibiru followed a path unlike any other world in the heavens, a path that stretched far beyond the familiar planets, looping through regions of space untouched by the light of the sun. They called it the Long Orbit. According to their writings, Nibiru's arc carried it through a vast span of darkness, disappearing from view for thousands of years before rising again into the sky of the living world. This cycle, they believed, determined the rhythm of history. When Nibiru drew near, the world shifted. Empires rose or collapsed. Climates changed. Oceans moved. The priests did not attribute these events to superstition. They believed Nibiru's passing influenced the balance of the heavens, altering the forces that shaped Earth itself. Modern astronomy recognizes that celestial bodies can indeed follow extremely elongated orbits, stretching far beyond the distant Kuiper belt. Some objects travel for millennia before returning toward the sun. Their paths bend under gravity in ways that once seemed impossible. And yet, among these distant bodies, one anomaly has troubled scientists for years: strange orbital tilts, clusters of far-flung objects drifting in unison, a gravitational pull with no visible source. Some researchers quietly propose the existence of an unseen world far beyond Neptune, a world large enough to influence the movement of these distant objects, a world that has not yet been found because it travels along a shadowed arc, slipping through regions where telescopes struggle to reach. They do not call it Nibiru, they call it a hypothetical planet, Planet X, a ghost in the dark. Still, the patterns remain. The Sumerians believed Nibiru was the cause of such disturbances. They drew diagrams showing orbits that dipped below the plane of the familiar planets, then rose again at a steep angle. These diagrams, though ancient and worn, bear a haunting resemblance to the curves studied by modern astronomers today. The priests wrote that when Nibiru began its return, the skies would behave strangely. The stars would seem to tilt. Seasons would feel unsteady. The world would sense a presence before it arrived. And always, they said, the Wanderer would appear first. This idea is echoed across Sumerian cities. The first sign was never Nibiru itself. It was the smaller light that preceded it, a wandering star that drifted across the sky as if marking a path. A messenger sent ahead of the returning world. Now, that messenger shines above us once more as 3i Atlas moves in silence across the deep. Some scientists argue that Nibiru cannot exist because no such object has been confirmed. They insist that the gravitational anomalies in the distant solar system may be caused by measurement errors or unseen clusters of smaller debris. They point out that no direct observation has been made, and they are correct. Telescopes have not yet found a world large enough to explain the distant patterns. But the Sumerians were not describing a world we would easily see. They wrote that Nibiru travelled through the deep dark, a region of space where even the sun could not reach. They said its return was not marked by visible brilliance, but by the signs left in the sky. The disturbances, the shifting stars, the wandering light, the same signs we see now. And in the ancient accounts, the return of Nibiru was never sudden. It was a slow rising, a long awakening. A movement that began quietly, unnoticed by most, announced only by the arrival of the wanderer. To the priests, this sequence was fixed. When the wanderer appeared, Nibiru's path was already turning toward the world. Some tablets describe the approach of Nibiru in symbolic terms, yet their meaning feels eerily literal. They speak of a world wrapped in deep fire and ancient oceans, a place where time moves differently, shaped by forces unfamiliar to the earth. A world whose surface glowed faintly, touched by energies of the far dark. These images may be myth, but even myth can carry truth. Perhaps the priests used the language they understood to describe a place beyond their reach. As Atlas continues along its strange arc, astronomers notice small gravitational ripples near its path. These are faint, subtle, but they exist. Slight shifts in the orbits of smaller bodies, tiny adjustments in motion, too small to cause alarm, yet too precise to ignore. Some attribute these ripples to interactions with solar wind or distant debris. Others admit they might indicate something passing through the outer system, something massive, something still hidden beyond the light. If Nibiru truly follows a long, looping course through the cosmos, then its return would begin exactly in this way. Quietly, gradually, with tremors instead of thunder. The Sumerians believed that when the wanderer returned, humanity stood at the threshold of a turning age. The appearance of the first fire star marked the beginning. The slow shift of the heavens marked the approach. The world would feel the change long before it saw the second light. And so we look at 3i Atlas, the faint pulse of its glow repeating through the dark. We listen to the whispers of gravitational disturbances. We watch the outer objects drift just slightly out of line. These signs alone do not prove the existence of Nibiru. They do not confirm the ancient warnings. But they echo something the Sumerians understood. They echo a pattern, a cycle, a return written long before our own age began. The wanderer moves, the heavens shift, and somewhere in the far reaches of the dark, a world may be turning its face toward us once more. The Sumerians believed the sky did not speak in single events. It spoke in pairs, in signs that echoed one another across the darkness, each completing the meaning of the other. And at the heart of their oldest warnings lay a mystery so important that it shaped entire cycles of their cosmology. A mystery they called the two fire stars. In their tablets, the first fire star was described as a wanderer, a lone light moving ahead of something greater. It appeared suddenly, shone with unusual brightness, then drifted along a curved path that broke the familiar rhythm of the heavens. This was the star we now call 3i Atlas, the messenger, the herald, the signal that the ancient cycle had begun. But the second fire star was different. It was not a messenger. It was the force that followed. The priests wrote that when the first fire star moved across the edge of the sky, the second light would rise behind it in the far dark. Not immediately, not in the same year or even the same generation, but in a slow, measured arc that mirrored the turning of cosmic seasons. They believed the two lights were bound together, connected by a hidden thread. When one appeared, the other would inevitably follow. The Wanderer was the opening of the cycle. The returning world was its completion. Modern astronomers struggle with this idea. The motion of celestial bodies is governed by gravity, not prophecy. Two objects do not align across millennia simply because ancient people carved symbols into clay. Yet the Sumerians were not describing coincidence. They observed these signs across generations, noting the rare moments when the two lights crossed paths in the sky. These moments were not common, they were not casual, they were turning points. They called these events the Great Crossings, times when Earth found itself between two forces older than civilization. What made these crossings so significant was not their brightness, but their effect. The priests recorded shifts in climate, disruptions in kingdoms, and changes in the very pattern of the stars during these rare alignments. To them, the heavens were not distant and cold. They were alive. And the alignment of the fire stars was a movement within that living sky, a movement strong enough to leave its mark on the world below. The symbol for the second fire star appears often in temple carvings, a circle surrounded by faint radiating lines, drawn with a heaviness that suggests awe or fear. It was not meant to resemble the sun. It was meant to represent something dimmer, deeper, and more distant. A world that did not shine by its own light, but glowed with a quiet fire born from ancient origins. To the Sumerians, this was Nibiru, a world of deep oceans and burning interior, a world that drifted through the far reaches of the cosmos on a path so wide that its return marked the end of one era and the beginning of another. They believed Nibiru's approach aligned with events of great change, periods when the Earth's environment shifted, when civilizations collapsed under pressures they could not explain, when the courses of rivers changed and new lands rose from the sea. Most historians dismiss these ideas as myth, but the geological record reveals episodes of sudden transformation scattered across deep time. Some are caused by volcanoes, some by impacts, some remain unexplained. And though science does not accept the existence of a returning world, the pattern of global shifts remains undeniably real. It is not proof, but it is a question, one the ancient skywatchers asked long before us. The priests wrote that the first fire star prepared the way for the second. It did not simply appear on its own, it marked a path through the heavens, a route that the second world would follow. And when both lights neared each other, a moment of alignment would occur, a moment the Sumerians feared and revered. This alignment was not a collision, it was a crossing of influence, a meeting of forces that shaped the behavior of the heavens. To the priests, this moment opened what they called the gate of the sky, a window between worlds when messages, signs, and energies passed more freely. Whether symbolic or literal, the concept remains one of the most mysterious in their cosmology. As 3i Atlas travels through the heavens now, its path echoes these ancient carvings with unsettling accuracy. It dips below the plane of known orbits, then rises again toward a point of alignment the Sumerians considered sacred. Astronomers debate the meaning of this. Some call it coincidence. Others admit the coincidence is difficult to ignore. If the Wanderer truly marks the path, then we must ask the question the skywatchers once whispered. What follows that path? The priests believed the two fire stars were not merely celestial bodies. They were symbols of timing, of return, of judgment and renewal. And they believed the alignment between them was the moment when the world shifted from one age to the next. We do not yet see a second fire star rising. The heavens remain calm, silent, unchanged. But the Sumerians warned that its approach would be felt long before it was seen, in subtle disturbances, in gravitational tremors, in the quiet stirring of the sky. and those signs have already begun. As Atlas continues its mysterious journey, the heavens wait, and somewhere beyond the reach of our instruments, a distant world may be turning slowly toward the light of our sun, following the path the wanderer has revealed. Whether myth or memory, the story of the two fire stars is not yet complete. We now stand at the halfway point, watching the first light drift quietly across the night. And if the ancient cycle is real, the second light may already be on its way. Among the thousands of clay tablets recovered from the crumbling ruins of Sumer, there is one that scholars approach with unusual caution. It is small, cracked along one edge, and worn by time until much of its surface has faded. But what remains is unlike anything else from the ancient world. It is known as the Tablet of Enki, a fragment of a larger work believed to contain one of the earliest attempts to describe the movements of the heavens, not through myth, but through memory. The tablet does not speak in the grand poetic language of creation. It does not describe gods battling storms or shaping rivers. Instead, its lines are quiet, precise, focused on a recurring celestial pattern that the priests interpreted as both prophecy and warning. And at the center of this pattern are two lights that shape the fate of ages. The first is the Wanderer, the same light we now call Three-Eye Atlas. The second is a deeper presence, a world whose name the tablet does not fully record, but whose description unmistakably matches Nibiru. The script begins with a simple line, written with careful strokes. When the first fire star awakens, the second shall follow. For centuries, scholars assumed this was a metaphor for seasonal cycles or the timing of agricultural rites. Many argued that the priests of Sumer used celestial symbols to describe events on Earth. But the tablet continues with details that cannot be tied to crops or rainfall. It speaks of the sky bending, of lights drifting along curved paths, of a cycle so long that only records spanning many lifetimes could capture its return. One passage describes a moment when two lights approach each other from opposite sides of the heavens. They do not meet physically, they cross in influence. Their paths form a vast arc across the sky, shaping the rhythm of the world. The priests believed this moment marked the turning of the age, a moment when the old order faded and a new one began. The fragment that follows is considered the most controversial. Though damaged, parts of the line remain clear. The Wanderer is not the warning, it is the invitation. This idea unsettles many researchers because it reframes the entire meaning of the Sumerian sky cycles. The Wanderer was never the threat. It was the signal that a long-dormant force was beginning to move. The ancient priests believed the appearance of the first fire star opened the path for the second, not through physical motion, but through cosmic timing. Some scholars reject this interpretation. They insist the phrasing is symbolic, a poetic technique meant to elevate ritual practices. They argue that the Sumerians did not have the means to observe distant celestial objects with such accuracy. And yet, the description of the arcs, the timing, and the behavioral patterns in the tablet match modern observations with unsettling precision. Across many observations, astronomers have studied Three-Eye Atlas using every tool available. They have studied its brightness, its velocity, its deviations from standard interstellar behavior. And while they propose explanations based on natural processes, certain anomalies remain. The faint rhythmic pulses of light, the unexpected shifts in trajectory, the subtle bursts of heat recorded along its path. If these marks are simply natural, then the Sumerian tablet is nothing more than an ancient coincidence. But if the Sumerians truly observed a similar object thousands of years ago, then the tablet is something far different. It is a record of a cycle witnessed before, a cycle now beginning again. One section of the tablet describes a gathering of the Anunnaki during the return of the Wanderer. They stand beneath the night sky, watching the slow drift of the first fire star. The text suggests that the Anunnaki recognized the moment instantly. They knew the cycle was turning, They knew the second light was rising beyond the horizon of the visible world. The priests wrote that the Anunnaki did not fear this moment. They accepted it. They understood the long ages, the deep patterns, the turning of worlds. And they believed that when the firestars crossed, a gate would open, not a physical doorway, but a moment in time when paths between worlds grew thin, when new knowledge could pass from one age to the next. This idea may appear mythical, but even in modern astrophysics, there are rare alignments that produce subtle shifts in gravity, energy, and radiation. These shifts are not dramatic, they do not shatter worlds, but they influence the behavior of certain objects, altering trajectories in ways that only advanced models can detect. Some researchers argue that the tablet is describing such an alignment, a moment when the positions of celestial bodies produce effects that ripple across the system. Most scientists dismiss the connection as speculation, yet the consistency between the ancient diagrams and the modern arc of Atlas cannot be easily ignored. The final portion of the tablet is badly damaged. Much of the text has crumbled away, leaving only fragments that hint at deeper meaning. But one line remains mostly intact, carved with a care that has preserved it through the passing of millennia. When the second firestar rises, the age will turn, and the world will be measured once more. Measured, not judged, not punished, measured, as if the world were being weighed against something ancient, as if humanity stood at the edge of a moment the early priests believed would come again. If the tablet holds even a grain of truth, then the wanderer before us is not a threat. It is a message, a sign written in the language of the sky, reminding us that the long cycle may be reaching its next turning. The Sumerians believed that nothing in the heavens happened by accident. The firestars moved with purpose. The cycles unfolded with intention. And the world below responded in ways that shape the destiny of civilizations. As 3i Atlas crosses the ancient arc with its quiet pulse, we must ask the question that has waited in clay for 5,000 years. If the first firestar has awakened, where is the second? Across the world, in places far removed from the deserts of ancient Sumer, quiet and unsettling signs have begun to appear. They do not arrive with the force of disaster. They come softly, like distant echoes of something shifting in the deep. And though each sign may seem small on its own, together they form a pattern that mirrors the warnings carved into clay thousands of years ago. A pattern the Sumerian priests believed would unfold when the wanderer returned. The first modern sign came as a sound. In remote forests, open plains, and empty coastlines, people reported hearing long metallic tones drifting across the sky. Low, drawn-out notes that rose and fell like distant horns. They lasted only a few seconds, then vanished. Some recordings captured these sounds, echoing through the air without any visible source. Meteorologists suggested atmospheric pressure changes. Engineers blamed distant industrial machinery, but many of these sounds were heard in places where no machines existed. In the Arctic, in remote island chains, in deserts untouched by modern infrastructure. The Sumerians wrote of these tones. They described them as the voices of the sky, signals that the heavens were shifting under the approach of the firestars. To them, these sounds marked the earliest tremors of the cycle, a whisper announcing that the world was preparing for something vast and ancient. The second sign came as electromagnetic disturbances. Pilots reported brief disruptions on their instruments. Compasses twitched. Radio channels filled with moments of static, even during clear weather. None of these events were strong enough to cause alarm. But they followed a strange rhythm. They appeared more often at night, and in certain regions they aligned roughly with the arc traced by 3i Atlas as it moved across the sky. Scientists attempted to explain these events through solar activity. They pointed to fluctuations in the sun's magnetic field, which can interfere with radio waves on Earth. But the disruptions did not match known solar patterns. Instead, they mirrored the timing of the wanderer's approach, appearing most often when the object crossed specific points in its path. The third sign appeared in the sky itself. In parts of the world, the night horizon glowed with faint but unusual colours, shades of deep blue, bands of pale orange, thin veils of light drifting across the edges of the atmosphere. These glows did not resemble auroras, which take on green or red hues and appear at high latitudes. Instead, they appeared at unexpected latitudes in places with no known magnetic disturbances. Photographs captured these strange lights, and though the images spread quietly online, researchers offered cautious explanations. Atmospheric scattering, temperature inversions, agricultural fires. But again, the timing raised a question. The Sumerians wrote that when the heavens prepared for the second firestar, the sky would change, not in storms or lightning, but in colours. The priests believed this glow was a kind of veil, a sign that the cycle was in motion. The fourth sign appeared in the behaviour of animals. Birds flew in erratic patterns during the night. Dogs stared upward and barked as though sensing something beyond sight. Herds of deer and antelope shifted direction without clear reason. Marine animals changed their migration routes. These changes were subtle, nothing catastrophic, but many of them followed paths roughly parallel to the arc of the wanderer, as if reacting to a faint tremor in the magnetic field. Scientists know that many animals sense small changes in the Earth's magnetic environment. Birds navigate using patterns of magnetic lines. Migrating animals can detect anomalies too subtle for human instruments. Yet the clustering of these reactions in recent months has puzzled researchers. Some attribute it to climate variation, others to noise pollution or light pollution. But again, the timing aligns with the trajectory of Atlas in ways that do not easily fit those explanations. The fifth sign emerged in data few people ever see. Deep space observatories detected faint distortions in gravitational readings. Micro ripples, tiny deviations in the expected motion of smaller celestial bodies. Not dramatic enough to indicate a new planet, not strong enough to reach headlines, but noticeable, consistent. These ripples appeared near moments when Atlas passed certain regions, as though responding to an unseen presence. Some astrophysicists suggested these fluctuations were caused by distant debris or measurement errors. Others admitted that the anomalies resembled the early signs of a large object exerting influence from far beyond the reach of our telescopes. They did not call this object Nibiru, but their models showed a curious pattern. The ripples pointed in a direction where no known body exists. The Sumerians believed the first sign of the cycle was the wanderer. The second sign was the trembling of the sky. The third sign was the quiet stirring of the world below. Only after these signs appeared did the deeper force begin to move. When the modern anomalies are placed over the ancient carvings, the parallels become difficult to dismiss. The priests wrote that the wanderer was the herald, that it would awaken the patterns of the world, that its presence would be felt before the second firestar rose, and that the signs would not arrive with destruction, but with subtle shifts, whispers, echoes, a world preparing for the turning of the age. Each of these signs on its own can be explained by science. Atmospheric tones, magnetic disturbances, unusual sky colours, animal behaviour, gravitational anomalies, all of these have rational theories. But the Sumerians would have asked a different question, not how, but why now? Why do these signs cluster together at this moment? Why do they align with the path of the wanderer? Why do they repeat patterns recorded by priests who lived before the dawn of written history? The modern world has explanations. The ancient world had warnings. And between them lies a space we are only beginning to understand. As the signs gather quietly across Earth, one certainty begins to take shape. If the old cycle is real, then the world stands at the edge of something vast, something the priests called the crossing, a moment when the forces of the heavens meet and the age turns into another. And that moment is approaching. There are moments in the long rhythm of the cosmos when the worlds seem to pause, not in silence or darkness, but in a stillness so deep that even the air feels aware of it. The Sumerians described this moment with a single word: the crossing. To them, it was the point at which the heavens tilted ever so slightly, placing Earth between two ancient forces that shape the turning of ages. It was the moment when the first firestar and the second aligned in influence, even if the second remained invisible to human eyes. As 3i Atlas continues its strange arc, the world may be drifting towards such a moment. The ancient priests believed the crossing did not occur when the two firestars were nearest, nor when they shone brightest. Instead, it happened during the quiet approach, when the wanderer reached a particular position in the sky, the point where its path intersected the hidden trajectory of the returning world. They drew this point on clay tablets as a curved intersection, a place where the two arcs touched for only a breath of cosmic time. The priests did not fear this moment, but they watched it with a reverence that borders on awe. They wrote that the crossing was a time when the boundaries between worlds grew thin. Not a physical gap or doorway, but a shift in balance, when forces that normally remained distant brushed lightly against one another. During this period, the world might feel heavier, night might seem longer, winds might move with a quiet unease. The priests believed that even the thoughts of people changed subtly under this influence, as if the mind were moving through deeper waters. Some modern scientists dismiss such ideas as mythic metaphor, but others note that small gravitational alignments can indeed create subtle effects. Not dramatic ones, not the kind that split worlds or shift continents, but faint perturbations, ripples in the patterns of motion and energy, enough to influence long-term climate, enough to alter the tides of the upper atmosphere, enough perhaps to echo through the magnetic field. These slight disturbances have already begun to appear. Over the past months, instruments have detected small fluctuations in gravitational readings, too faint to attract widespread attention. Unusual air currents have been recorded at high altitudes, drifting in patterns that meteorologists struggle to classify. A subtle increase in atmospheric density has been noted during nights when the sky glows with the pale horizon colours described in ancient texts. None of these changes point decisively to a celestial cause, yet taken together, they resemble the signs the Sumerian priests described when the heavens entered the crossing. The most unsettling reports come from observatories watching the outer solar system. For reasons not yet understood, a handful of small bodies beyond Neptune have shifted their courses by minute but measurable degrees. These shifts do not indicate a new planet. They do not reveal a clear source, but they suggest the presence of something exerting a faint gravitational pull, something moving slowly, something large. Some astronomers believe these deviations reflect the lingering effect of distant debris or gravitational resonance. Others quietly admit that the pattern could indicate an approaching mass still hidden in the dark, not a world near enough to be seen, but one returning along an arc older than human memory. The Sumerians believed that Earth always felt the influence of the second firestar before anyone could see it. They believed the wanderer marked the first touch. They believed that as the object traced its arc, the world beneath would shift in response. And when both forces aligned even for a moment, Earth would stand at the crossing, balance between what was and what would come. Not all ancient interpretations describe this moment as threatening. Many tablets speak of renewal of seasons, renewal of civilizations, renewal of knowledge. But others warn of turbulence, of a world tested, of an age judged not for its power but for its choices. The idea of judgment may seem strange to us, yet even in modern terms the concept holds an unexpected truth. When celestial forces shift, the world responds. Climate changes. Patterns move. humanity adapts or falters. In this sense, the crossing is indeed a test of resilience, of preparation, of understanding. As 3i Atlas drifts through the night sky, moving in a way that challenges the models built to predict it, the question becomes unavoidable. Is this the moment the priests recorded? Is the wanderer approaching the intersection of its path and the unseen arc of the returning world? And if so, what does that mean for us? The Sumerians believed the crossing brought a silence unlike any other. A heavy quiet that settled over the world for a time, as though the heavens held their breath. It was not the silence of fear, but the stillness before change. In recent months, many have reported experiencing something similar. Nights that feel unusually calm, horizons that hold a strange weight, a sense that the world is waiting for something just beyond the edge of sight. If the ancient cycle holds true, the crossing does not mark an ending. It marks a turning, a shift in the long movement of ages, a moment when the world prepares for the presence of the second fire star, though that presence may still lie far beyond the reach of our eyes. We do not yet know whether this moment has arrived, but the signs suggest that the world is approaching something the ancient priests believed was inevitable, something the wanderer has marked with its quiet pulsing light. And as Earth drifts softly into the alignment the Sumerians called the crossing, we are left with a single waiting question. What comes after the stillness? There comes a moment, after the shifting of signs and the trembling of the heavens, when the sky grows quiet. Not empty and not dark, but quiet in a way that feels deliberate. A quiet that settles over the world like a slow breath drawn by something ancient. The Sumerians called this moment the Silent Age. It was the final chapter of the cycle, the calm that followed the crossing, when the wanderer completed its path and the world stood between what had been and what was yet to come. As 3i Atlas drifts farther from the inner system, its pulse softening into the dark, that ancient quiet seems to echo again. The priests of Sumer wrote that the Silent Age began when the first fire star faded. The wanderer, having marked the arc of the heavens and stirred the signs of return, would slowly dim until its presence slipped beyond the reach of human sight. They believed this fading was not a departure, but a signal that its purpose had been fulfilled. The messenger had delivered its message. The herald had opened the path. And the world, having entered the crossing, now waited for the next movement of the cycle. In recent nights, astronomers have noticed the same dimming. Atlas no longer pulses with the steady rhythm that troubled researchers months before. Its heat bursts have softened. Its trajectory has stabilized. The unusual anomalies that marked its early movement have grown faint. Natural explanations are offered arriving at the limits of observation, decreasing solar reflection, loss of volatile material. All of these are plausible. Yet the timing echoes the ancient pattern too clearly to ignore. In the Sumerian view, the Silent Age was not a moment of action, but of reflection. The world was believed to hold its breath. Winds calmed, waters grew still. People felt a softness in the air, as though the earth itself were watching. Some tablets describe nights when the sky seemed closer, as if pressing gently down, inviting humanity to listen. Many cultures have myths about periods of waiting, times when the world quiets before change. But the Sumerian version is different. It is not a mythic pause between wars or storms. It is a cosmic pause, a moment when the alignment of the heavens creates a balance so delicate that even the smallest shift might carry meaning. This idea may seem poetic, yet it resonates with something in the modern world. In certain places, people have spoken of nights that feel unusually calm, of a stillness in the early hours before dawn, of a heaviness that lingers in the air without reason. These are not scientific observations, but they echo the feeling described in the ancient texts. The Silent Age was believed to mark the moment when Earth was measured, not in judgment, but in observation. The priests wrote that the Anunnaki watched the world from afar during this time, not intervening, not guiding, merely watching. They considered the choices humanity had made the growth it had achieved, the knowledge it had gained. The world below would reveal its nature, and the cycle would continue based on what the heavens observed. Some interpret this metaphorically, others take it literally, but in either case, the meaning remains. The Silent Age is a moment of truth when the world quietly reveals who it has become. Modern scientists, of course, do not speak of cosmic observation. They speak of natural cycles, of gravitational balances, of transitional phases between alignments. They point out that the fading of Atlas is consistent with natural models. They remind us that no evidence exists for a returning world or ancient watchers in the dark. And yet, those same scientists continue to track subtle anomalies in the outer system, anomalies that persist even after accounting for known forces. Tiny deviations in the movement of distant objects, slender shifts in gravitational readings, patterns that appear too consistent to dismiss, yet too faint to confirm. These anomalies may amount to nothing, or they may be the earliest whisper of the second firestar, still hidden in the deep dark, moving slowly along the long and ancient path described in the Tablet of Enki. If that is true, then the Silent Age is not the end of the prophecy. It is only the end of the first half. The Sumerians believed that after the Wanderer faded, the world would enter a period of calm before the next great sign, and they believed that during this calm, humanity would have the chance to understand the message carried by the first light. To them, the message was simple. A new age approaches. Prepare with wisdom. Watch the sky. Remember what came before. As Atlas drifts into the darkness once more, becoming a memory rather than a presence, we are left with the same quiet invitation. The sky above us stretches in deep blue stillness. The world moves gently, as though wrapped in a soft veil. And somewhere far beyond the edge of our instruments, something waits, something ancient, something patient. Whether the Anunnaki are myth or memory, whether Nibiru is a distant world or a forgotten symbol, the cycle described by the Sumerian priests feels alive once more. The Wanderer has passed, the signs have stirred, the crossing has begun. And now the world rests in the Silent Age, balance between what was written in clay and what has yet to unfold. Perhaps nothing more will happen. Perhaps the sky will return to its ordinary rhythm. Or perhaps the priests were right, and this quiet moment is only the breath before the second firestar rises across the dark. Until then, we wait. And in the waiting, we listen to the stillness of the sky. If this quiet journey through forgotten skies has spoken to you, feel free to leave a like, share this story with someone who enjoys mysteries, and subscribe so you never miss the next chapter. Your support helps keep these calm explorations alive, and I am grateful to have you here.